So I'm going to start our Saturday morning talk. So welcome everybody. And again, it's an enjoyable time of the day. We've just decided to have a talk of Dhamma and be in the presence of everybody as well. So as you know, this morning it's Deborah Raikes. And I'm sure she's known to quite a lot of you because she's always been very fully involved in so many things in Samatha and lots of courses at Green Street. And is involved in various committees and is a trustee as well. So Deborah's class is in Huddersfield, isn't it, Deborah? And right. It's been going for quite some time as well, 15 years. So there's lots of these outposts of Samatha that aren't always known about, but you know, going strong. So this morning, Deborah's going to give us a talk on the Three Refuges. Something we always feel we know about, but it's wonderful to always revisit those fundamental teachings. So over to you, Deborah.
Okay, thank you. Good morning to everybody. Yes, I've been interested in this as I suppose something that's quite experiential for some time really, which is why I thought I would attempt to talk on it. In some ways it's not an easy thing to talk about because it's an area that we think we know quite a lot about, but when I started unpacking it and looking at how it could, as I say, be experienced and really used, just some interesting things came to light which would be good to share with you. So I thought first of all it would be good to think about what do we mean by the idea of refuge. And I think with all the changes in this last year and so many things being maybe taken away from us and so many things that we've been prevented from doing, it's made me think about how, what is one's true refuge? You know, things that we maybe used to take for granted, basic freedoms, being able to visit people in their homes, that sort of thing, going to meetings in person. As I say, there's been so many things we haven't been able to do, but yet, what is it that maybe we can rely on? And why is it that we feel the need to rely on something or to have something that is kind of solid, because I think that's an interesting one to explore as well. So I think as many people will probably agree, a basic human need is to feel secure, safe, happy. That's quite basic, and I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting that, but I think it's interesting to explore sort of what that means. Because in the ways of the world, we're kind of encouraged to maybe find safety and security in things and work, our paid work, people, holidays, all sorts of things, even nice weather, you know. All of those things can give us a temporary lift, but they don't last and they can all be taken away. So they're not ultimate refuges. And actually, I suppose you could see the root of so much suffering that people have is when they are surprised and shocked that these things don't last. And I think there's nothing wrong with enjoying them for their temporary pleasure that they can give us, but not seeing them as anything more than that, really. And then there's the practice and what we do. So Nye Boonman used to pose a question, which is quite an interesting one, I think. Nye Boonman used to say, do you want to be happy, more happy, or do you want to have less suffering? And it's interesting maybe to examine what brought one to the practice in the first place, because I think people do fall into those two groups, but it can change over time. So some people come to the practice because they're suffering, maybe something has happened in their life or they're feeling some anxiety and they realize that the things of the world are not providing them with security and they're looking for something else, and that can give quite a strong sense of urgency, I think, because there's a sense of really needing the practice. Other people maybe already have those basic things in their life, like family, friends, job, wealth, health. They have all of that, but they have a sense that that isn't enough. And maybe they understand that those things will not last forever. And there's something that's inherently a little bit lacking in it. maybe they have a sense of wanting to go a bit further with things. There's this sense of this kind of sort of wanting something. And so what is it that we do with that? What is it that we do when we encounter the practice? We've come to the practice either because we sense that we've got lots but it's not enough, or we're suffering and we need to get out of that suffering. Well, a really good starting point, I think, for looking for refuge is exactly what the Buddha said, the path that leads to the cessation of suffering. So I'm just going to screen share with you the Noble Eightfold Path.
That's great, yes.
First slide there. Okay, so
Definitely, yeah.
many of you will have met this before, but in a sense it is the whole path encapsulated in one image. So there's a lot to try to see afresh there, really. This is everything. This is the Noble Eightfold Path. This is what the Buddha said leads to the cessation of the causes of our suffering, and therefore we would feel safe, secure, happy. There's everything in this. And it's interesting, I think, particularly having it divided into the 3 different sections, starting with the division of ethical, with ethical action, that these are the ways that we operate in the world. That often we maybe forget the importance of this. You know, we maybe put a lot of emphasis on the practice, but these ways of operating in the world, the way we speak, the way we act, the way we spend the majority of our time, whether it's at work or whatever it is that we do in the world, those things are not harming, making the world a better place, real opportunities to put our practice into action, to enact it out. Really, really important, especially for us as lay people who don't spend most of the day practicing. You know, our practice is something that really fuels our action in the world. And then going down to the bottom one, there's the work we really do in the practice. There can also be done in everyday life as well. So there's the working with effort, that we see the practice just doesn't work if the effort is unbalanced. And we balance mindfulness and concentration and develop both of them so that they are in harmony with each other. So in the practice, we have a real opportunity to do that without being swayed by the world. You know, we go deep inside ourselves and we can look at the movements of attention and the mind and the body, and we don't get distracted by other people. But equally, we can develop those 3 through doing very basic things in the world. Pretty much everything, actually. It can be hard at first, and one of the things we quite often do when we go on retreat is we have the opportunity to do simple tasks like washing up or painting a wall, looking at effort, mindfulness and concentration. And I think one of the things that practice does as it develops is it becomes easier and easier to make every part of your life an opportunity to develop effort, mindfulness and concentration, as in a balanced way, even quite complex interactions with others. And what I'm going to talk about quite a lot today as well, though, is the development of wisdom, which is so, so important. Because in a sense, what we do quite a lot in our practice is we really hone the attention, the mind, really get in touch with the brightness of the mind, which is its natural state. But then what do we do with that as such? How does that change the way we see things, which then changes everything, the way we're motivated? So there's also the idea of right understanding and right thought. And I think what's important is that these are very much things that you do and you cultivate. So although we started off with this idea of maybe wanting a place of safety, it's not about being passive and being looked after in some way. It's actually about you develop something. So you take refuge in this, in the opportunities really to be able to develop these things and cultivate them, and then they become your refuge. And something that I thought would be a very nice thing to do would be to, I'm going to chant for you the Three Refuges chant, and I'm going to pause after Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and I'd just like you to see what comes up for you when you hear Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. Okay, so okay. I'll start with the homage to begin with and just let it, say, just wash over you. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Okay. I think it's interesting that in the chant, it's actually there 3 times. That 3 times you would go for refuge to Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. And personally, I found it, as I say, quite helpful actually to do that every now and again, to do that chant and just see what kind of reverberates in me, what those words actually mean, maybe in quite a wordless way, but just to feel, what does Buddha mean? What does Dhamma mean? What does Sangha mean? What does it mean to actually take these things as a refuge? Because it's a big thing to be doing, you know, to be saying that these things are my refuge. These are the things where I put my trust. What does it mean to have refuge in the Buddha? Well, I think there's different ways that we can see these. You can very much see it in terms of taking heart from what the Buddha himself achieved, but I think it's also very, very important to be aware of that potential that we have within ourselves too, because the Buddha was a human being who did the work, and if we do the work, we would become the same. So there's something incredibly optimistic about knowing that, I think. Realistic too, it's true. So I'm just going to share with you a few slides So this is a typical sort of Buddha Rupa image, and there is something, it's interesting that these rupas have become really popular these days, haven't they? They're in garden centres, they're in everywhere. When I first started practicing, it was nigh on impossible to buy a Buddha Rupa. In fact, I remember at the first class I was at, there was something quite mysterious about coming across them if you hadn't travelled in the East anywhere. And I remember someone in my first class saying to me, well, they sort of find you, you know, because she'd found some at, I don't know, antiques fairs or car boot sales or something, and she'd had this real feeling that the Buddha had sort of, the Buddha Rupas had sort of found her. But now they're very easy to get hold of. And when you look at an image like that, it is very inspiring. There's so much about it which is very beautiful. You've got the firm contact with the ground. You've got the way the hands are. There's a whole air. It's really kind of conveying something. And I think it can be very useful to look at images like that and be aware of the qualities of the Buddha. And in a sense, it's a little bit like looking at the destination. It's like looking at where we can be if we do the work. And I'm just going to show you another one, which you may well recognize because it's the Buddha from Green Street, and it's beautiful, large golden Buddha. Very, very beautiful and inspiring. And may well as well recognize this one. Not many of us have been to Green Street for some time. This is a very beautiful Buddha head, which many people like to walk up to and look out over Green Street and have a look at, pay the Buddha a visit at the top of the hill. And I think it's worth thinking about what exactly do we mean. So in Pali, another very common chant we do is the iti piso. So we chant iti piso bhagawa arahang samma sambuddho vijja charana sampanno sugato lokavidu anutaro purisa dhamma sarati satta dewa manusanam buddho bhagawati. And when that's translated, what we're saying is, blessed one, worthy, fully self-enlightened, endowed with knowledge and conduct, fortunate, knower of the worlds, the incomparable tamer of trainable men, teacher of gods and men, enlightened, blessed. And I thought it'd be quite nice to just put those words next to an image of the Buddha there. And I think it's, as I said, it's so important to not see these as something separate from yourself. In Mahayana Buddhism, they put it, they go quite clearly in saying that everybody has Buddha nature, which is the idea that everybody already has the seed within them of Buddhahood. It just needs the potential to grow. And I think that's very nice as well, because it's almost like saying there is nothing wrong with us the way we are. It's just that there's some things that need removing. So that essential nature is there, because sometimes we can have a sense of we're a long way from this. But essentially it means that everybody has the potential to become enlightened like the Buddha. And in Theravadan Buddhism, in the tradition that we follow, we're working with the practice towards becoming an Arahat. And an Arahat is someone who has reached enlightenment and ended their suffering by following the path taught by the Buddha. So by following the Noble Eightfold Path. And it's said that the Arahat has blown out the basic defilements. So before we go on and look at the work that we might need to do to truly make this idea of the Buddha as a refuge for us, because again, I think refuge is very much about being active and doing something with it, thought it might be quite nice to do another chant while you perhaps look at that image and look at the definition there of what we're saying. And I'm just going to chant for you the Iti Piso. So just be aware of those qualities, because what we do when we recollect the triple gem, we're recollecting, first of all, we're paying homage to the Buddha, and then we're recollecting the qualities of the Buddha, and then we also go on and recollect the qualities of the Dhamma and the Sangha, which I'll be talking about a bit later. So just be aware of those things within yourself too, your own potential. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Iti piso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vijacharana sampanno sugato lokavidu anuttaro purissa dhamma sarati satta dewa manusanam buddho bhagavati swakato bhagavata dhammo sanditiko akaliko ehipasiko opanaiko pachatang veditabo vinyuhiti. Supatipanno bhagavato sawaka sangho ujupatipanno bhagavato sawaka sangho nyayapatipanno bhagavato sawaka sangho samicipatipanno bhagavato sawaka sangho yadidam chattari purisa yugania tapurisa bukala esa bhagavato sawaka sangho ahuneyo pahuneyo dakineyo Angelikaraneyo anuttarang punya ketang lokasati. And I think it's interesting to think, how much do we really believe that we've got this potential, you know? Because the theory is that the mind, and we experience this in the practice, the mind is very bright and the mind knows where to go. And it's really important to not interfere with that process. Sometimes people talk about practice is actually about getting out of the way. Once it's got going, once you've done the initial work, once you've sort of lit the fire, as it's said, get out the way and let the practice do its work. And it's said that enlightenment can be achieved by anyone who has basic discipline. That is, they do the work. So they do the practice, and they keep sila, you know, they keep the ethics that's required, the ways of living that are required, that they have a capacity for self-reflection, that they keep investigating, and that they have critical thinking skills. So you develop, the more you reflect, the more you turn your mind to what's going on and to examine things, the more you will develop those kind of thinking skills. So what is the work that we need to do? What are the things that we need in order to realize this bright mind that we do get glimmers of during practice, but to have it there? And sometimes it is a bit like when the clouds part in the sky and the sun suddenly comes through and you can't believe it. Yesterday I left where I live, which was all foggy, went over to near South Manchester where it was actually quite sunny. It didn't seem like that would be possible, that the sun could be there. And it can be like that in the practice, isn't it? You start the practice mind quite foggy, things part, something seems to part, something seems to give way. We get a sense in the practice of the potential of the mind. Three mental defilements that we work with, and we'll all recognize these, that there is greed or desire for things we don't like, anger or hate, or sometimes it's called aversion, and we have an ignorance as well, or delusion. And that is the cause really of all of our problems, those things, but they're not the mind itself. That's the thing that's really important to be aware of. They're just qualities that come into the mind, a bit like the clouds and not the sky. They're things that come up, and it can be very difficult because when we're in the grip of these things, desires, aversions, or just not being able to see clearly, it's very difficult. We get sort of taken over by them. But one of the things that practice does is it allows us to get a little bit of a separation, by continually seeing desire come and desire go, aversion come, aversion go. We don't believe in those things quite so much. We might begin to see the patterns of the way these things play out, and we don't get quite so hijacked by them when they come up. And we see them as much more transitory and things that are not actually the mind itself, but just things that come into the mind. And these are the things that make it difficult for us to take refuge in our own brightness, because they cloud it over and they cover it over. And I think what's quite good is to maybe start to understand a little bit about what exactly they do. And it's said that there are 3 levels at which these defilements can enact. So starting with quite a subtle level, which is very pre-conscious. It's just only just slightly detected, and it's not playing out in any kind of way. It's very subtle, that we all have greed, hatred and delusion there, but sometimes it's just bubbling a little bit like sediments at the bottom of a river, and it's not coming up, and it's not actually causing thoughts or emotions. It's just latent. It's just very, very subtly there. Quite difficult to work with it like that, actually. Easier in a way when it starts to, maybe we work on that one more through the practice, changing some of our basic, very, very early pre-conscious ways of interacting with objects. In a way it's easier, but also more difficult when greed, hatred and aversion has become thoughts and emotions. But at least you can see it then. The problem is it can take you over. I was thinking, I do like to do gardening analogies. And I was thinking, I used to have a garden which had a lot of brambles. It had been left to run wild for many years. And the bramble network of roots was underneath the surface of the entire garden. But when the brambles poked themselves up above the soil, then I could see them. And it's like, you've shown yourself now. I can dig you out. I know where you are. And it's a bit like that when we catch ourselves having, a strong wanting something that we know isn't really quite right. It doesn't have a healthy taste to it. It doesn't feel good. And same with aversion as well. And we've got the opportunity then to work on these things, because we can actually see them and hopefully catch them before they've really taken us over. And a much more gross level of transaction is when, unfortunately, we actually start to act things out, maybe through sharp words or actions, and then that's at the level that it causes karma for us as well. So we've actually done something with it. We've actually impacted on the world because of our greed, hatred, delusion. So we've actually made it more solid. So it's actually really become something that then becomes part of our sort of future because we've acted in a particular way. So as I say, it's something that's becoming more and more solid as you go down that list. But I think it's really important to see these things as opportunities, because they're sometimes working with the practice feels like one way. For many people, the practice can stay quite constant for long periods of time. It's like taking some medicine on a daily basis. The medicine doesn't particularly change, but what it's doing is it's allowing the mind to be more sharp and brighter and be able to see these things in our lives, and then we can work on them. And we might think, oh, this isn't like jhana, or this isn't like something really exotic, but this is the work. You know, these are the lists these are the things that defile the mind. So I'll just give you a slightly more detailed list. I don't want these to be daunting. I want you to see them more as opportunities of things to work with. So it's said that we have 7 latent tendencies. And we'll probably recognize some of these: desire for sense pleasures, aversion, conceit or pride, wrong view, doubt, desire for existence, and ignorance. Some of these look quite similar to the hindrances. We work on them during the practice. And during the practice, there is an opportunity when we develop a level of calm, concentration, one-pointedness. We do suppress the enactment of these tendencies. They don't enact, but they don't go away, which is why it's so important to challenge these things when they come up. I noticed myself yesterday morning when I was off on my day out and running a little bit late. There's some roadworks going on in the town where I live, and the traffic was backed up quite far. And I noticed my view coming through. It was ridiculous, so I could see it so clearly. My view was, I could feel this irritation and almost like they're doing this on purpose. Why do they always dig this road up? And I thought, hang on a minute. Aren't you so lucky that you live somewhere where people repair the roads, you know, so that you can drive on them? So there's always different ways, you know, of looking at things. And when you catch the sort of ridiculousness of your own opinion, then you've got an opportunity to challenge it, because these things might seem quite little, but they are the way our mind operates. They are the clouds in the sky. They're the things that are stopping us becoming enlightened, you know, and we have to chip away at them, because the more we entertain those tendencies and let them become thoughts, emotions, the danger is then they become actions. The more we do that, the more we're encouraging them, actually. And a lot of the work, I think, on the spiritual path is just dealing with this stuff, you know, which plays out on a daily basis. It's not all about getting into rarefied states, you know, on the meditation cushion. It's about dealing with these things. And I'll give you a slightly more even detailed list of things in case you don't recognize any of those things on that one. These are things that just are very much there in the world and in life, aren't they? All of these different things play out all the time. And in this particular sutta, the Buddha described these 16 this time, mental dharmas. This isn't supposed to make it look like you've got this massive list of things to do. As I say, it's more just these are different opportunities to work on. They negatively affect one's spiritual journey. It's there, you know. So you've got these different opportunities there. I think it's important, though, that to do this with sort of good humor and compassion towards yourself, and recognizing that this is just the work that everybody has to do, because it's the nature of being human. We may have ones that are particularly strong in us, but these are the things that we work with. And just to have that, I think it's very helpful to have that sense that you're on a journey, you know, that we're very lucky in that we have a lot of signposts, a lot of maps, a lot of things to help us. Yes, the ultimate refuge is in our own kind of potential, but there are lots of things that can help us, and that sense of being on a journey. And it might not always be easy, but there are always opportunities and things to work with to help one to do that journey towards freedom and towards happiness and towards a greater sense of liberation. Okay, so what about Dhamma? What about Dhamma? That's a great refuge, isn't it? I remember when I first came to Buddhism thinking, just being so struck by how incredibly rich the Dhamma is. You know, there's so much of it. The teachings of the Buddha, just give you an overview there of the sacred writings. So the Dhamma, in terms of the writings that the Buddha produced, or were produced by people that had heard the words of the Buddha. So there's the known as the three baskets, and there's the Vinaya, which is for the sort of basket of disciplines and rules for monks and nuns. And then there's the suttas that people may well be quite familiar with. And I think sometimes just hearing those words says something to you. It sort of it can go quite deep. And I think, and then there's the Abhidhamma as well. There was a talk a few weeks ago about that, which really sets out the sort of psychology of the mind in Buddhist terms, the way the mind works. And just hearing those words and hearing Dhamma talks, hearing other people's interpretation of the Dhamma really is very helpful, because it helps us to align our view, you know, going back to that Noble Eightfold Path and the idea of right thought, right understanding. You can use the intellect, but it's sort of intellect heart, I think. So you may hear small amounts of Dhamma and just have maybe you notice the gap between you and the way you're seeing things and the way the Dhamma is being stated. And I think over time, it can really help to align one's view, to just keep coming back to it, just keep coming back to it by continual exposure and reflection. Maybe you've been in a particular state of mind, you knew it was unskillful, you read something in the Dhamma, you understand at some level where the gap was. And it's a very lovely thing. It's very inspiring as well. Very inspiring too. And really important to be investigating those things. Dhamma can also be described as reality. Very nice, the picture of the Buddha there teaching different members of the Sangha at the time, and you can see the effect his teachings are having on them and the inspiration of it. But Dhamma is not only to be found in the written or spoken teachings, because those teachings are reflecting reality, actually. And I think there's a very nice quote here from Ajahn Chah, which is basically that the Dhamma is revealing itself every moment. And it's only when the mind is quiet that we can understand what it is saying. For the Dhamma teaching, the Dhamma teaches without words. And I think as well, this is where it kind of, you see the closeness between Dhamma and practice. So when the mind is quiet, that's what we cultivate through the sitting practice and through mindfulness in everyday life, we can be much more open to reality, and we can let go of preconceptions. And it's those things, like I was talking about before, we can be much more aware of those latent tendencies playing out, and the various thoughts and emotions that might come up that are driven by desire and aversion and delusion. We can become much more aware of, you know, how sort of ridiculous those things can be. Because it's said that if you truly saw Dhamma, you wouldn't have any suffering because your view would be completely aligned with reality. I'm going to again give you a very small everyday example, but once I caught myself being cross that my toaster had broken. And, you know, again, there was almost that fabrication that goes on in the mind that somehow the world is against me. You know, my toaster has broken. How dare my toaster break? Well, the toaster is just an object. It has no, it has no intention against me, and it's just an object that has stopped functioning. And the problem was that it was me that wasn't seeing that toasters function for a while and then they will stop functioning. And that is just the nature of a fabricated object that has a job in the world. You know, eventually its function will stop, its functionality will cease. And obviously a big one is people die, people get sick. If we get taken by surprise by that because we haven't really built it into our expectations of the world, we will suffer a lot more. I remember actually after I'd lost somebody, noticing when my thoughts seemed to be encouraging grief unnecessarily. So for example, I might almost start torturing myself with various thoughts that I wasn't going to see this person again, I wasn't going to do anything with them. And I thought to myself, well, that isn't really necessary. And it's just making it bigger than it is. It's more that I have to get used to this person not being there anymore. But if I start adding on extra things that just cause suffering, then I'm just going to make it bigger than it actually is. Whereas often it's just that we have to, as Nai Booman so often says, get used to with it. You know, situations change and that is difficult for us because we want them to stay the same, but they won't and they never will. And we have to adjust, we have to get used to with it. And what does help is if our underlying view is that we always knew they would anyway. That does help, because if we go through life expecting nothing to ever change, like, as I say, the small example of you buy a toaster and it'll last forever, you're going to get a lot of nasty shocks. So in a way, going back to really those basic signs of existence, that Dhamma is about really understanding impermanence. And something that I didn't say as well actually around, but I think it was on the screen, those 3 defilements. The big problem with the greed, the hatred and the delusion is that they tend to be emphasizing a sense of self. You know, here I am operating in the world, the big I am. Things should be coming to me, everything should be working out for me. Or maybe it's the opposite. We might even have a bit more of a victim sort of view, but it's all around, you know, I, or things last, things last. The Dhamma is about things being actually, they're much more fluid, but there's nothing wrong with that. And it's not unsafe, but it's just maybe not what we might cling to. It's just that things do change and things are much more fluid than that. And I think one of the things that actually we very much do in practice, and I'd like us to do a short practice in a minute, is about being able to experience things just as they are, not putting any ideas on top of them. And I thought what would be very nice to do is to do a 5-minute practice when we just breathe a long, comfortable breath, and we try to notice each moment of the breath as if we have never breathed before. So if you want to just stay where you are, if you want, there's no need to get into sitting position or anything. So if you just want to get into a comfortable position and just see if you can experience the breath just purely as sensations that are arising in the mind body afresh each moment, each tiny little micro moment. And we'll just do that for 5 minutes, a long, comfortable breath. Okay, so we'll just bring that to a close. I'm just going to read you Ajahn Chah's quote again because I think it's so powerful. The Dhamma is revealing itself in every moment, but only when the mind is quiet can we understand what it is saying. For the Dhamma teaches without words. I think just even doing a few minutes of watching the breath and trying to see it as it actually is, without any preconceptions, any ideas, we realize how the mind's quite bumpy. You know, it does it bits, then it comes up with an idea or it drifts off. And there's these kind of different things going on in the mind, isn't there? There's the ability to actually be quite present and bright in allowing things to reveal. But then there's other moments when maybe that isn't there, something else comes in. And it's very interesting. But again, it's this idea that we might start off practice wanting a refuge, wanting something more, but actually the refuge is the work we do, the effort, the right effort, you know, the way we work with these things. And it's not something outside of us. It's not that we go to this refuge of Buddha, Dhamma, but actually it's integral to us. We are part of it. We're not separate from it. So, as I say, with one thing you may notice during practice is that the sense of self diminishes, because if we're truly just in contact with the breath, in contact with the way things are, with basic sensations, the sense of self drops away to an extent. Or there may be moments where you notice that you're just not doing this creation of an idea that you are this person sitting here. But all you're experiencing is sensation. And I think you're probably doing what Ajahn Chah was saying there. You're allowing the Dhamma to reveal itself moment by moment when the mind is calm. And so we can make Dhamma our refuge, because by knowing Dhamma, by developing right thought and right understanding, we will suffer less. So Dhamma isn't a place that you go to, it's an understanding that you develop that will make you feel more whole, more healthy, more complete. And in fact, the word Dhamma means uphold. So, you know, so Dhamma actually upholds, you know, the whole of the path. The third refuge is Sangha. How lovely to see you all here now. And
You want to go back to seeing you, Deborah?
Can you not see me?
Not yet, no.
Ah, sorry, I thought you could at some
Great, thank you.
Yes. Okay, so let's just see Sangha. That's lovely. 38 people here. Lovely. Really great to see everybody. Sangha is so powerful, I think. Really powerful. When I first came to Samatha, I have to admit, I really came for the practice and the teachings. You know, I used to go to meetings and think, wow, I learned so much today. I heard so many fine words. I understand everything so much better. But then as time went on, it was actually seeing the people at the meetings that became so powerful, because the associations with those people, these shared experiences, became just as powerful as the Dhamma, maybe more so, because often in the sense we get a sense when we're on the path that we're going a bit against the stream of mainstream society. We're going a bit against the flow. You maybe get a sense of that if you listen to the news too much. There's a tone there which is different, something quite negative. If you expose yourself too much to those ways of the world that come through in different media, certain people, you feel the mismatch between what we're doing here and what the world, what's going on as a sort of zeitgeist, if you like, sort of in the world. It's not that the world is wrong, but the world hasn't got that sense of optimism, I suppose, or that sense of going somewhere or working towards something or becoming more free. There's a bit of a resignedness about it, I suppose. A bit of a resignation, I suppose, that can be there, which can not be very helpful. It can pull you down if you're not careful, or you might be able to pull them up, but that's for you to judge. But certainly Sangha is so important. Quite often just seeing another meditator, hearing somebody's words, seeing someone's face, seeing someone smile, knowing that there's other people there on the same path as you. I'm going to share with you a sutta. So I'm going to just do the screen share again, just a short sutta about this, which I think just kind of says it all. So where are we? So here we are. Can you see the sutta there? So this is the Upadana Sutta, which is called half of the holy life. I have heard that on one occasion the Blessed One was living among the Sakyans. Now there is a Sakyan town named Sakkara. There Venerable Ananda went to the Blessed One, and on arrival, having bowed down to the Blessed One, sat to one side. As he was sitting there, Venerable Ananda said to the Blessed One, "This is half of the holy life, Lord. Admirable friendship, admirable companionship, admirable camaraderie." Now, I've felt that so often, even coming to a Zoom meeting, just see all the faces. It feels like this is the holy life, doesn't it? This is so uplifting to see the others, to see you all there, part of the Samatha Sangha. And then the Buddha replied, "Don't say that, Ananda, don't say that. Admirable friendship, admirable companionship, admirable camaraderie is actually the whole of the holy life. When a monk has admirable people as friends, companions, and comrades, he can be expected to develop and pursue the noble Eightfold Path." And how does a monk who has admirable people as friends, companions, and comrades develop and pursue the noble Eightfold Path? There is the case where a monk develops right view, dependent on seclusion, dependent on dispassion, dependent on cessation, resulting in relinquishment. He develops right resolve, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, dependent on seclusion, dependent on dispassion, dependent on cessation, resulting in relinquishment. This is how a monk who has admirable friends, companions, and colleagues develops and pursues the noble Eightfold Path. Interestingly, even though these things are dependent on seclusion, you need the Sangha to develop them. And through this line of reasoning, one may know how admirable friendship, admirable companionship, admirable camaraderie is actually the whole of the holy life. It is in dependence on me as an admirable friend that beings subject to birth have gained release from birth, that beings subject to aging have gained release from aging, that beings subject to death have gained release from death, that beings subject to sorrow, lamentation, pain, distress, and despair have gained release from sorrow, lamentation, pain, distress, and despair. It is through this line of reasoning that one may know how admirable friendship, admirable companionship, admirable camaraderie is actually the whole of the holy life. And I think what's quite interesting there is the fact that he's also included admirable camaraderie. It's all right to have some fun, to have a laugh, to have, warmth between people in the Sangha. That's actually so important. And I think that's something that's very, very strong in Samatha. And I think it's admirable that we've kept that going through even online meetings. The warmth is very much still there. And there's a sense of not being alone in this work, that yes, we have the potential of our own brightness, our own path to liberation to use as a refuge. We have teachings, but so important that we've also got others. That there's also different ways of working with this that I just wanted to share with you, because this is something that I've always found really useful to consider in terms of ways of working, and very much ways of working in the Sangha. So I'm just going to share with you about different ways of working. So it's said that there's 3 ways of working. So there's work for oneself, and quite often, and quite rightly, that's the way that we work when we first come to practice. As I said earlier, we have this sense of wanting some refuge, wanting something, and we have to develop the basic discipline, get the practice going, have a basic understanding of the Dhamma. But very importantly, and most people come to this within even a short time, giving to others in the tradition. That may be by, it may be in quite small ways. It may be by attending a meeting like this and asking a question that you feel will be helpful for others to hear, or contributing something on a practical level. We have so many opportunities when the centres are open, which hopefully will not be so long, of doing practical work for others. Maybe making Green Street, repairing something at Green Street, making something nicer at the Manchester or Milton Keynes Centre for others to come and enjoy it. And there's a sense of, this is very much one's practice. We're doing something for the Sangha, we're doing work for others so that others can come along and be in a centre where the atmosphere is conducive to practice. And there's something about working for the Sangha, working for others, that allows your own practice to blossom. It becomes bigger than just you. And then the third way of working is you just do it because it's the right thing. You're not even thinking this is for this particular person or that particular person. It's just because the work is important to do. So in a way, when your practice develops and you've been doing it maybe for some time, you're not thinking, oh, I want to do this practice to get this for me, or I want to do this practice so I'm kinder to my family, or I'm helping the Sangha flourish. It's just that you truly believe that the practice is important to do. You just do it without question. A bit like you just keep your body clean and healthy. You don't think every day, oh, I'm going to have this shower so that my skin is clean. You just do it because it's what you do. And again, reducing this down to an everyday level, you could think of it a little bit like you're driving along a road and there's a rock in the road. And if you're just working for yourself, you swerve around the rock and you just think, great, I didn't hit that rock. All you're thinking about is yourself and your own journey. If you're thinking for others, you may be driving on the road and you think, oh, I'll move that rock because my neighbour's going to be coming down a bit later and I don't want them to trip over that rock. So there's something just slightly sticky about it because you're thinking about particular reasons. And the third way of working, which is the most refined way, the one where there's the least sense of self, is you drive along the road and you see the rock and the rock is in the wrong place. It shouldn't be in the middle of the road. It's not the right place for a rock. So you just pick the rock up and move it to the side, just because that's what one does. You don't think, I'm a great person, I've cleared the road, or isn't this great that so-and-so is not going to go past it. You've just made the world the way it should be. You just moved something. So looked really at the whole idea of refuge and Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. And it's funny really, because in a way there's a sense of starting wanting something and maybe finishing after you've examined them all, realizing that there isn't really anything to want because we're actually very rich anyway, but we just need to keep doing the work. In a sense, refuge is definitely not something really solid that you can grab onto like a lifeboat or a life jacket or something. I think, oh, I'm safe now, I've got this refuge. It's actually very much about you let go and you trust. It's about sort of much more having trust and letting go of that sense of self and sense of wanting. Yeah, that's what, in a way, refuge is having no refuge. That is the ultimate refuge, which I think would be a good place to stop at.
Gosh, thank you so much, Deborah. I mean, it's so wonderful to revisit the fundamentals, isn't it, and fully realise them. Because we can take them a bit for granted and get a bit habitual in reciting them without sort of really kind of fully appreciating the possibility there. So it was really good, really, really good to get into that. So we can open up now to our Sangha, present Sangha, and see if anyone would like to respond, ask a question. There you are. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Okay.
It's
So
a
I
bit.
just wanted
It
to
could do with being a bit louder. If you can put your sound up a bit.
I don't know if I can do that.
It doesn't matter. No. Okay, that's better if you moved a bit closer. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to say thank you very much for such a wonderful, inspiring talk. You know, as you said, it's always very nice to be reminded of the basics, I suppose. At the beginning, when we were asked to sort of pause for a second and think how we responded to the thought of the sort of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I have to admit I came up with I felt a bit of sort of ambivalence coming up. You know, there's a bit of me that wants to sort of go out and play and doesn't want to sort of sit down and be sensible and be brought back to reality and so on. I'd probably rather just carry on with my delusions and sense desires and all of that. And I don't know, it's just something I thought I'd mention. I find it a bit of a theme in a way with Buddhism, that I can sort of, you know, start off feeling, oh, I don't really well, I'm being pulled a little bit in two directions, but it can be very refreshing when you're sort of reminded about what the actual point of it all is. You know, just say thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, that was really I really got a lot from that, and thank you, Deborah. I just wanted to say that it's interesting because I actually felt like I got to the root of something yesterday. And I've been practicing for about, I don't know, 17 years. I remember coming to, I think, one of your classes many years ago at the Samatha Centre. Was one of the first I popped my head round the door and discovered the wonderful things going on in Samatha. And yeah, it's interesting. It just connected your talk so much today, because I felt like I'd relieved some sort of taint was revealed to me yesterday, and it was just ended up being so clear, and following it back to, it was probably something to do with childhood dynamics in the family, and I was still, you know, these things were popping up, but because of the practice, I was able to really look at it in a three-dimensional way, and I felt really relieved, because I felt like I now owned it in a way, and now I can deal with it, and I think your talk today has really sort of solidified it further, to know that so even though I felt troubled and a bit self-pity with something that was going on, and then when it revealed itself, yes, I just felt this relief and happiness coming to combat it. And so that, what you've said today, has really sort of solidified that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's great.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Well, the thing is that Sangha has been variously defined, and it's at the very simplest level, it's the taught. You know, the teacher, the teaching, and the taught. Now the thing is that that at the technical level, and in that sutta, not the Gatha you quoted, the four, that is to say, the four pairs, the 8 kinds of noble beings. Well, I understand, and by the way, I have asked this question from other people, and ultimately it's just a technical question, so I don't expect you to reply it. But the four types of Sangha, technically speaking, are people who have got to a stream entry, once return, never return, and Arahat. Then they divide it into 2 categories, the 8 kinds of noble beings. And the question is, exactly what are those 8? And I used to think it could be male and female, or it could be path and fruit. But I have never really worked out what that technicality is of the 8 kinds of noble beings, or even maybe according to another translation, 108. But anyway, at least the 8 kinds of noble beings. Do you know what these 8 kinds of noble beings are?
That's it.
The highest level is the Arahat. The lowest level is the person well established on the path to stream entry. Then it goes stream entry, path to once returner, path, goes like that. In the Abhidhamma, the first level, the person established on the path to stream entry, lasts for 1 moment, which I find rather implausible. In the suttas, they last for, the real phase of life. So if you're truly well established on the path to stream entry, such a person is the first noble person. And there are 2 kinds, a Dhamma follower and a faith follower. So the Dhamma follower is more attuned to the teachings. The faith follower, they're described as having great, in a sense, great love for the Buddha and what he's about. So that the faith follower, you perhaps get more in the Asian Buddhist community than we do in the West, but that, but we get both in both. So yeah. And the 8 noble people are found amongst the monastics, the lay people, and some of the devas. So, for example, Sakat is a stream entry. Yeah.
So what are the 8 kinds of people? Are they like people who have attained the path and who are on the way to the path? The next one, as it were, even.
Well, they're all on the path, but you've got stream entries, once returner, nonce returner, Arahat, and then you've got the 4 people established on the path to those 4 levels.
But does that mean pre-path or post-path?
Depends what you mean by path.
But path means like the first glimpse of Nibbana. So the minute that you got that first glimpse, that would be on the path, presumably like the stream enterer. So is it, as it were, stream entry and on the path to beyond to I don't know, once
it's
return?
It's not stream entry. Stream entry onwards is often explained like that wrongly. The first level is somebody well established on the path going towards stream entry. Yeah.
So it could be somebody on the way to stream entry and then the stream entry, somebody on the way to once returning and whatever, like that.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a point something before stream entry.
Yes, that's where it starts, in my understanding. Yeah.
And that's a technical thing, isn't it?
That does widen it out somewhat, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which is good.
Okay.
Hi. Oh, well, thank you very much, Deborah. And I just repeat what everybody else has said. And thank you, Peter, also for that really helpful explanation. Just to put a little extra in the pot, there is, in the Anguttara Nikaya, there's some nice little texts about what recollections people should do in everyday life. And sometimes you get the Buddha, sometimes you get the Dhamma, sometimes you get the Sangha. But for one layman, the Buddha says, well, remember the Buddha, remember the Dhamma, but he doesn't say remember the Sangha in the technical sense, whatever that is. He says, remember your good friends that wish you well. And he uses that as the third, as the refuge one. Just remember your good friends that wish you well. It's a sort of tunandia. So I think I like Peter's interpretation and that big broad base for Sangha. And I think the Buddha felt like that too.
One thought that came to my mind with the relationship with the Buddha. I think, and when Peter also mentioned about faith and love for the Buddha, it was almost, I found when I embarked on this path, that I didn't want to rely too much on anything, other than myself. There was something about you've got to rely on yourself first. That's what this path is about. I think there's some teaching about self-power, isn't there, and other power. But though I often did feel a very kind of strong connection, if you like, and liked the image of the Buddha a lot, but was sometimes trying to hold back and not rely on it, not get too involved with that. Just something that came up for me, but I do find it inspiring, and it was lovely. I think particularly from the talk, the image of the Buddha Rupa at Green Street and the words at the other side really had quite a strong effect on me, and it felt right. I think maybe I've got it sorted now, the connection, but that was just something I think.
It's a terminology from East Asian Buddhism.
Oh, right.
Like Zen is self-power, Pure Land is other power. Yeah.
Oh, Pure Land. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. I think now it's come up. Okay.
I was just going to say that there's also going to be some other talks over the Christmas period. In fact, one every day for 12 days, following the theme of the 12 days of Christmas. So that coming out in an email. It's very
great. Okay. Yes, I'd had a whisper of that. Now I know what it is. Okay, then. So it's time to, you want to finish in any way, Deborah? Or sometimes people do a blessing, or sometimes...
Yeah, maybe if I could ask somebody else. Eileen, would you be able to do a blessing, please?
Yes, of course. Excuse me. Bhavatu Sabha Mangalangra Kantu Sabha Devata Sabha Buddhanubhavena Sada Soti Bhavantu Te Bhavatu Sabha Mangalangra Kantu Sabha Devata Sabha Dhammanubhavena Sada Soti Bhavantu Te Bhavatu Sabha Mangalangra Kantu Sabha Devata Sabha Sanghanu Bhavena Sada Soti Bhavantu Te.
Sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu,
Sadhu.
sadhu.
Thank you, Deborah. Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you.